When Zoe Harris bought an old, rusted water tower for next to nothing, she never expected it to lead her to something far greater than she could have imagined. What seemed like a bargain for her mechanic business soon turned into an unimaginable discovery. Beneath the decaying tower, Zoe found an underground tunnel that hid secrets worth millions and a legacy tied to a past she never could have predicted. Before we dive into Zoe's incredible journey, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love stories where hidden treasures and unstoppable women collide, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode takes us deeper into the mystery than you ever expected. Zoe Harris stood at the edge of the overgrown lot, staring up at the rusted water tower. It had been sitting there for decades, untouched and forgotten, looming like a relic of a time when things were built to last. The paint on the tower was peeling, and the steel structure creaked as it swayed in the wind, but Zoe didn't see decay. She saw potential. Her fingers tightened around the cold metal of the fence gate as she let her eyes wander across the land. This was it. The perfect space for her new mechanic shop. Zoe had been scrimping and saving for months, and now, after years of hard work, she had finally found the spot that could help her take her business to the next level. The small town of Maple Creek was full of old buildings, and for years, Zoe had worked from her modest garage at home, fixing up cars and trucks for the local farmers and small business owners. But lately, the work had been drying up. The rusting buildings were becoming too small for her expanding ambitions. She needed more space. She needed something different. The water tower seemed like the perfect fit, cheap, isolated, and, most importantly, full of character. Zoe wasn't afraid of hard work. She knew that, with enough sweat and elbow grease, she could turn the abandoned structure into a thriving workshop. She imagined the floors swept clean, the tools organized, and her shop buzzing with the hum of progress. She pulled her phone out of her pocket and checked the time. The auction for the property had just ended, and she was the highest bidder. The deal had been too good to pass up. With a satisfied grin, Zoe walked toward the rusted structure, pulling her gloves on. The weeds were thick here, the tall grass waving gently in the breeze. The tower looked like it hadn't been touched in years, and she could already picture how she would transform it. A little elbow grease, a coat of paint, and a fresh start. Maybe she could even use the tower itself as a landmark for the new business. But as she reached the base of the tower and ran her hand along the metal, a small glint caught her eye. A rusted door, partially hidden by overgrown vines, appeared to be in a state of disrepair. Zoe bent down to inspect it, brushing aside the tangled leaves that clung to the metal. The door was old, barely visible beneath the green foliage, but the edges of it were sharp, almost as if it had been left untouched on purpose. She pulled gently on the rusted handle, but it didn't budge. Curiosity piqued. Zoe stepped back and gave the door a firm tug. With a groan, it creaked open slightly, revealing a narrow passageway that led underground. She frowned. She hadn't expected this. The tower wasn't just a water tower, it was a hidden entrance to something. Her heart beat a little faster as she stood there, a feeling of anticipation swirling in her chest. What could be down there? Was this just an old maintenance tunnel? Or something more? She shook her head, brushing off the sudden surge of excitement. There was no time to waste. The door was open now, and she had a new project to dive into. With a glance at the setting sun, Zoe took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to uncover what lay beneath the rusted exterior. The cool air from the underground tunnel hit Zoe as soon as she stepped through the rusted door. It was a stark contrast to the dry heat of the afternoon sun, and the faint smell of earth and old metal filled her nostrils. Her boots crunched on the gravel beneath her feet as she made her way down a narrow, winding staircase. The beam from her flashlight flickered in the darkness, casting long shadows on the walls of the tunnel. Zoe paused, standing at the foot of the stairs, feeling the weight of the quiet around her. The only sound was the soft hum of the wind above ground, and the occasional drip of water echoing from somewhere deeper in the tunnel. She tightened her grip on her flashlight and took a step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. What was this place? A forgotten maintenance tunnel? An old storage area for the water tower's infrastructure? Or something else entirely? The walls were lined with dust and cobwebs, the kind that only came with years of abandonment. But what caught her eye weren't the spiderwebs or the decaying walls. It was the faint outline of a door on the far end of the tunnel, barely visible behind layers of grime. It looked newer, almost out of place, like it had been built long after the rest of the structure. She took a deep breath, her curiosity getting the better of her. Zoey had always been the type to dive into something headfirst, especially when it came to mechanics. But this felt different. There was something almost magnetic about the door, as though it was calling her. With careful steps, she moved toward it, her boots echoing softly in the still air. She reached the door, which was surprisingly sturdy, and ran her fingers over the cold metal surface. The door had a heavy-duty lock on it, one that looked out of place in such an old building. Her mind raced. Who would put such a lock on a door in a forgotten water tower? What was behind it? Was it even safe to open? Zoey hesitated for a moment, but only for a moment. She wasn't about to let some old lock stop her from finding out what was hidden behind it. She reached into her tool belt, pulling out her favorite crowbar, and placed it against the seam of the door. With a grunt, she worked the tool in, applying steady pressure until she heard the satisfying click of the lock disengaging. The door swung open with a loud creak, revealing a small room beyond. A faint yellow light flickered overhead, casting a strange glow across the space. Zoey stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room for any signs of what lay ahead. The air inside smelled musty and damp, like it had been closed off for far too long. She barely noticed the chill that crept up her spine as she took in the strange sight before her. The room was filled with shelves, old machinery, and crates. None of it looked like it belonged in a water tower. It was all too organized, too deliberate. And what really caught her attention were the rows of old metal filing cabinets against one wall. Her breath quickened as she approached the cabinets, her fingers itching to open one. She couldn't shake the feeling that this room wasn't just some forgotten storage area. No, it was a hidden treasure trove of secrets. But whose secrets? And why had they been kept here, buried beneath layers of rust and time? Zoey opened the first drawer with a flick of her wrist, the sound of the metal scraping against metal echoing in the small room. Inside, she found stacks of old yellowed documents, some of them stamped with symbols she didn't recognize. Her pulse quickened as she flipped through the papers, each one seeming to lead her deeper into a mystery that felt both thrilling and unnerving. One piece of paper in particular caught her eye. It was a blueprint, meticulously drawn, detailing a system that she could barely comprehend, but it looked too advanced for its time. At the bottom of the blueprint, scrawled in fading ink, were the words, "Project Horizon, Confidential." The hairs on the back of Zoey's neck stood up. What in the world had she just stumbled upon? Zoey's hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers over the blueprint, her eyes lingering on the words, "Project Horizon, Confidential." It didn't make sense. The design on the paper was far too intricate, too advanced for something that belonged to a forgotten water tower in a sleepy town like Maple Creek. The dim light overhead flickered, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Zoey's thoughts swirled as she carefully placed the blueprint back in the drawer, her mind racing with possibilities. What was Project Horizon? Who had built this hidden room? And why had it been sealed away for so long? She moved toward the back of the room, where a dusty desk sat against the far wall, cluttered with more papers and files. Her heart pounded as she stepped closer, pulling open one of the drawers. This one was filled with letters, some stamped with official government insignia, others with cryptic symbols she didn't recognize. As she sifted through the pages, Zoey's eyes caught a series of photographs, black and white images, of a man standing proudly next to large, strange machines, with blueprints in his hands and a focused expression on his face. The man was older, graying hair and a sharp jawline, but his eyes held a sharp intelligence that sent a chill down Zoey's spine. She flipped through the pages, discovering more photos of the man in various locations, standing beside a mechanical contraption that looked like a vehicle, holding what appeared to be a map marked with coordinates, and working on what looked like a piece of advanced machinery. The last photograph in the series caught her breath. It was a close-up of the man standing next to an enormous vault door, similar to the one she'd just opened. The vault's entrance had the same heavy lock and intricate mechanism that Zoey had just pried open. But the photograph was decades old. How could it be possible that this man had been here, in the same place, so long ago? Zoey's pulse quickened as she looked at the back of the photo. Handwritten in elegant script was a name, Dr. Edmund Rowe. Below it, a date, 1957. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just some abandoned storage room. It was the remnants of something far more secretive, something tied to the government, maybe even military. But why? Why was all of this hidden here, in the middle of nowhere. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of something shifting in the distance. Zoey froze. Her heart skipped a beat. The tunnel. Was she hearing footsteps? She quickly shoved the photographs back into the drawer and snapped it shut. Her hand flew to the crowbar still resting on the desk, her eyes scanning the shadows. The air had grown colder, and the silence around her felt suffocating. It had been so quiet before, but now, it was as though someone or something was lurking just out of sight. She tried to steady her breathing, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. There had to be a logical explanation for the noise. Maybe it was the wind, or an animal. But as she turned to leave, the faint echo of footsteps grew louder. Someone was coming. Zoey's instincts kicked in. She grabbed her flashlight and ducked behind a stack of crates, holding her breath. The footsteps stopped at the door, and for a long moment, everything was still. Too still. And then, the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against metal reached her ears as the door to the room began to open slowly. The door creaked open, just a few inches at first, and Zoey held her breath. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat louder than the last. Whoever was outside seemed to hesitate, as if unsure whether to enter. Zoey's grip tightened around her flashlight, the cold metal sending a shiver up her arm. She barely dared to move, her eyes locked on the slight gap between the door and the frame. The light from her flashlight quivered in her hand as she peered into the shadowed hallway beyond, trying to make out any details. The footsteps had stopped, and the silence was now oppressive, thick with the tension of the unknown. After a long moment, the door swung open wider, revealing a tall figure standing in the doorway. Zoey's breath caught in her throat as her eyes adjusted to the dim light. The person was wearing a dark coat, their face obscured by a hood. The faint glow from the tunnel light didn't reveal much, but the figure's presence felt unsettling. "Who's there?" Zoey's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. She didn't know whether to stay hidden or confront the stranger. The figure paused, not answering at first. Zoey could hear the faint rustle of fabric as the person shifted their weight. Finally, a low voice spoke, its tone gruff and cautious. "I should ask you the same thing." Zoey's mind raced. She couldn't see their face clearly enough to tell who they were, but their voice held an authority that sent a jolt of fear through her. I just found this place," Zoey stammered, trying to remain calm. "What is this place? Who are you?" The stranger didn't immediately answer. Instead, they stepped fully into the room, the door clicking shut behind them with an eerie finality. Zoey remained frozen in place, trying to gauge their next move. Every part of her wanted to bolt, but something held her back. She couldn't leave now. Not with everything she'd uncovered. The figure took a slow step forward, the shadows shifting as they came closer to where Zoey stood. "This isn't a place for curiosity," the voice rasped. "You should have left when you had the chance." Zoey's pulse quickened, but her mind worked through the fear. Who was this person? What did they know about Project Horizon? Were they connected to Dr. Edmund Rowe? "I'm not leaving," Zoey said firmly, her voice stronger than she felt. "I've already found too much. I need to know what's going on here. Who are you?" The figure stopped moving, standing just out of her flashlight's range. "You think you're the first to come looking?" they asked, their voice softening with a strange, almost resigned tone. "You think you're the first one to stumble across this place and think you can just walk away?" Zoey swallowed hard. She wasn't sure whether this person was a threat or a guide to answers, but she had to know. She had no choice now. "I don't know what's going on," she admitted. "But I know this is something big. This," she gestured to the room, to the photographs, to the blueprint. "This is more than just some old warehouse. This is something from the past, something secret. I'm not leaving until I understand it." The figure paused. For a moment, there was silence, the weight of Zoey's words hanging in the air. Then, the stranger spoke again, but this time, there was a subtle shift in their tone. "You're right about one thing," they said, almost too quietly. "This place is full of secrets, and if you want to find out what's hidden here, you better be ready for the truth." Zoey's heart skipped. She wasn't sure if the stranger was about to help her or lead her further into danger, but one thing was certain, she wasn't turning back. Not now. Zoey felt her pulse race as the stranger stepped closer, their silhouette becoming clearer in the dim light. The weight of the room seemed to shift with every word they spoke, a quiet sense of danger hanging in the air. "I'm not here to make friends," the stranger said, their voice laced with caution. "But if you want answers, you're going to have to trust me. The people who ran Project Horizon, they didn't just leave a mess behind. They left something else too." Zoey took a slow step forward, her mind racing. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tight with anticipation. "What did they leave?" The stranger hesitated for a long moment, before pulling something from beneath their coat. A small, weathered key, dull brass with intricate engravings, was placed carefully in Zoey's hand. The metal was cold, as though it had been untouched for years. "Do you know what this is?" the stranger asked. Their voice softened, as if they were unsure whether to continue. Zoey examined the key, the engravings unfamiliar. The handle was worn, smooth from years of use, but the symbols etched into it were like nothing she'd seen before. She shook her head slowly, unsure what it meant, or what she was even holding. "No," she said, looking up. "What is it?" The stranger's gaze flickered briefly toward the back of the room. "That key," they said quietly, "was meant to open the vault. The one that was sealed away by the people who built this place. It's where everything started, and where everything ends." Zoey's heart skipped. A vault? She'd seen something like it in the photographs earlier, that vault door in Dr. Rowe's image, the one that looked almost identical to the one she had opened earlier, the one in the hidden tunnel. This vault, Zoey's voice trailed off, realization dawning. This vault. "It's down here, isn't it? In this tunnel?" The stranger nodded, their eyes narrowing slightly. "Yes. But it's not just a vault, Zoey. It's a doorway to something much bigger than anything you've imagined. And not everyone who's searched for it is friendly. Be careful." Zoey swallowed, the enormity of the situation sinking in. She hadn't expected anything like this. A hidden vault, a secret project, and now this mysterious stranger handing her a key that was tied to it all. It felt like she had stepped into someone else's story. She looked back at the figure, her mind reeling. "So, what's inside? Why is it hidden down here?" The stranger paused, as though choosing their words carefully. "It's a weapon," they said, their tone darkening. "A weapon that was never supposed to see the light of day, and now, it's up to you whether the world ever finds out about it." The words hung in the air like a silent threat. Zoey's stomach tightened. A weapon? The idea felt too big to process. But the stranger's serious expression made it clear this wasn't some wild conspiracy. "And if I don't help you?" Zoey asked, her voice steady, despite the dread creeping into her chest. The stranger's lips curled into a brief, grim smile. "Then you'll never leave this place alive. Not with the kind of people who are hunting for it." For a moment, Zoey felt like the ground was slipping out from under her. Her thoughts raced. She had no idea what she was getting into, but she couldn't back out now. She had already uncovered too much. The stranger stepped back, glancing over their shoulder. "The vault's near the end of the tunnel. You'll need this." They handed Zoey a small flashlight and a map, both of which seemed well worn, like they had been used for years. Zoey glanced at the map. The path to the vault was marked in faded red ink, the journey long and dangerous, leading deep into the bowels of the earth. "Go," the stranger urged, their voice quiet. "But remember, you're not the only one who wants what's inside." With a final glance at the stranger, Zoey felt the weight of the key in her hand. She had a choice: turn back and pretend she never found this place, or step deeper into a world she didn't understand. But there was no going back. Not now. She took a deep breath and moved toward the tunnel's entrance, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The air grew heavier as Zoey ventured deeper into the tunnel, the dim beam of her flashlight cutting through the suffocating darkness. Every step she took seemed to echo through the narrow passage, amplifying the uncertainty and the sense of being watched. She kept her hand tightly, gripped on the flashlight, its glow flickering in the damp air, illuminating the walls that were covered in grime and age-old dust. The map in her hand felt strangely weighty, as if it were guiding her not just through the tunnel, but through a moment in history. The faded red ink marking the path ahead seemed almost deliberate, as if it were meant to test her, to see if she was worthy of uncovering the secrets hidden so far below ground. She didn't know what she was expecting to find, but it wasn't this. Every twist and turn in the tunnel seemed to be part of a larger design, each part of the passageway deliberate, yet impossible to comprehend. The walls narrowed at certain points, making the space feel claustrophobic, like the tunnel itself was trying to swallow her whole. Zoey paused in front of a small alcove, where an ancient, rusted machine sat wedged against the wall. Its once functional parts were now broken and decayed, but there was something about it that caught Zoey's attention. She knelt down, brushing away the thick layer of dust, to reveal a set of metal plates on the front. They were cold to the touch, and etched into the metal was the same strange symbol from the key, the one she had seen earlier. She leaned in closer, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up as her mind raced. What was this machine? It didn't look like anything she had ever seen before. The symbol was unmistakable. It was part of the same design as the blueprint she'd found back at the water tower, and now it was tied to something even deeper. The machine, though rusted and half forgotten, seemed important. Zoey felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just an abandoned tunnel with discarded machinery. This was a place that had been designed, each component, each corner, carefully thought out by someone who had a vision far ahead of their time. Standing up, Zoey looked down at the map in her hand again. The path led her further, deeper into the unknown. As she moved forward, the walls seemed to close in on her, and the air grew even colder, as if the tunnel had been holding its breath for decades, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, but Zoey kept moving, her flashlight guiding her. Finally, she reached a door at the end of the tunnel. The heavy metal door was unlike any she had seen before. It was vast and imposing, with intricate carvings around the edges, more of the strange symbols from the key and the blueprint. It was the kind of door you'd expect to see in a government facility, not hidden beneath a water tower in the middle of nowhere. She could feel the weight of the room pressing in on her. The door didn't just represent a physical barrier. It represented everything that had been kept hidden, everything that had been buried for years. And now, it was just one step away from being unlocked. Zoey reached into her pocket and pulled out the old brass key. It felt heavier than ever in her hand, like it carried the weight of the history she had stumbled upon. She could hear the echoes of footsteps, distant but growing louder, as though time itself was closing in on her. She slid the key into the lock, her heart pounding in her chest. The lock clicked open with a finality that seemed to shake the very walls around her. The door creaked as it swung open, revealing the room inside. It was massive, its walls lined with old equipment, workbenches, and filing cabinets. And at the center, bathed in the faint glow of her flashlight, was a large vault. It looked almost ceremonial, its surface etched with the same mysterious symbols, its size intimidating. Zoey stepped inside, her mind racing with the implications of what she was about to discover. Her breath caught as she approached the vault, a sense of awe and trepidation flooding her senses. She had come so far, uncovered so much, and now she was face to face with the very heart of Project Horizon. The vault, now just a few feet away, seemed to pulse with a silent energy as though it was waiting for someone to open it, to finally reveal its contents. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it on the vault door. She knew there was no turning back now. Zoey stood frozen, staring at the vault as its massive door creaked open. The room beyond was filled with shelves, crates, and strange machinery. But what caught her attention was the dim glow emanating from a large screen at the center. The room was far too advanced for its location, and the sheer scale of it left her in awe. This wasn't just some old storage facility, it was a carefully hidden sanctuary for something far more important. Her heart pounded as she took a step closer, drawn by the mystery of the machines. The air was thick with dust, and the quiet hum of the machines only added to the eerie atmosphere. Zoey's fingers tightened around the metallic device in her pocket, the key. She wasn't sure what it unlocked, but she could feel its power in her hand. With a cautious step, Zoey moved to one of the machines, her flashlight casting eerie shadows along the walls. The intricate symbols etched into the metal made her skin prickle. These weren't just random markings, they were part of something bigger. Something she wasn't yet ready to understand. As she moved closer, the screen flickered to life, showing a cryptic message. Project Horizon, Stage 4. The words struck her like a lightning bolt. She had no idea what Project Horizon was, but the connection to the vault was undeniable. Her hands trembled as she touched the screen, and in response, the machine seemed to come alive. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered, and the hum grew louder. Then she saw a small weathered box on one of the shelves. She hesitated before approaching it, curiosity getting the better of her. She opened it slowly, revealing a sleek metallic key, its surface gleaming despite years of neglect. The moment she touched it, the machines hummed louder, and the screen flashed again. "Welcome, Project Horizon Administrator." Zoey's stomach dropped. What had she just become a part of? Zoey's pulse raced as the last words flashed on the screen. "Welcome, Project Horizon Administrator." Her fingers tightened around the metallic device in her hand, the weight of its power settling in. She wasn't sure what she had just activated, but there was no time to think about it. A new sound caught her attention: footsteps. Soft, deliberate, and growing closer. Her heartbeat quickened as she turned toward the entrance of the vault. The door creaked open, revealing a tall figure standing just inside, silhouetted by the dim light from the tunnel. Zoey instinctively stepped back, pressing herself against the cold metal of one of the machines. The figure stepped into the room, their eyes scanning the vast space, seemingly unfazed by the vault's eerie hum. The stranger's face remained hidden beneath a hood, but the outline of a weapon at their side was unmistakable. Zoey's breath caught. This person had to be after the same thing she was, and they weren't here for friendly conversation. She steadied herself and took a step forward, her voice steady, despite the rising tension. "What do you want?" she asked, her eyes flicking toward the device in her hand. The stranger paused, then slowly reached up, lowering their hood. Zoey's breath hitched as the stranger's face was revealed: sharp features, calculating eyes, and a grim expression. They studied her for a long moment, sizing her up before speaking. "You've unlocked something that was never meant to be found," they said, their voice low and cold. "And now, you're in my way." The weapon in their hand glinted in the faint light. Zoey's heart pounded as she realized she wasn't just dealing with someone who was curious. This person had come to take whatever Project Horizon was, by any means necessary. Without hesitation, the stranger lunged toward her, and Zoey's instincts kicked in. This was no longer a question of answers, it was a fight for survival. The stranger's movements were swift, almost too fast for Zoey to follow. Before she could react, they closed the distance between them, knocking the metallic device from her hand and sending it skittering across the cold concrete floor. Zoey's heart dropped, but her instincts kicked in. She needed to act quickly. She grabbed a wrench from a nearby workbench and swung it at the stranger, catching them off guard. The wrench hit their arm with a satisfying thud, but the stranger barely flinched. They smirked, a cold, knowing look in their eyes, as they effortlessly knocked the wrench from her grasp. "You think you can stop me?" the stranger hissed, stepping closer, their weapon now aimed directly at her. Zoey's mind raced. She had to think of something, anything, to get out of this. She couldn't let the stranger take control of the vault or whatever Project Horizon was. The power of the metallic device was too dangerous. She needed it back. "I don't want any part of this," Zoey said, her voice strained. "I don't even understand what Project Horizon is, but I know it's not what you think." The stranger's face hardened. "You're lying," they sneered. "You've seen more than enough to know exactly what's at stake, and now you're standing in my way. You won't get out of here alive." Zoey's throat tightened as the stranger advanced, their weapon raised. She couldn't afford to be passive any longer. The vault was hers to control, and she had to make sure it stayed that way. But as the stranger stepped closer, Zoey's heart sank. They weren't just here for the technology, they were here for her, to make sure she didn't leave with it. As Zoey backed into the machines, she realized she had to make a choice: fight or surrender. But deep down, she knew the truth. This was her fight. The stranger's grip tightened on their weapon, and Zoey felt the oppressive weight of the moment. She was cornered, the machines around her now seeming like silent witnesses to the fight. The stranger was too close, and she had no more time to think. With a burst of adrenaline, Zoey reached into her pocket and pulled out the metallic device, the key that had unlocked the vault. The stranger's eyes followed the movement, narrowing as Zoey held the device up. "You don't know what that thing can do," the stranger warned, voice low and threatening. "Hand it over." But Zoey didn't flinch. She had already made up her mind. This wasn't about the device anymore. It was about who had control over the vault and the dangerous secrets inside. She could no longer afford to be passive. With a swift motion, Zoey slammed the device into a nearby panel. The vault seemed to react, a low hum vibrating through the floor, as the machines around her powered on. The display on the nearest console flickered to life, showing a new message. Stage 5. Self-defense protocols engaged. The stranger's face twisted in confusion and panic. "What are you doing?" they shouted. But Zoey didn't answer. The vault was now awake, and the machines seemed to respond to her presence. The air heavy with mechanical energy. Zoey's fingers hovered over the controls, and the display flickered again. A warning. Unauthorized access detected. Protocols initiated. She had done it. She had activated the vault's defenses. The heavy door began to close, sealing her inside with the machines and locking out the stranger. The stranger lunged toward her, but the vault's systems were faster. The door slammed shut, with a resounding thud, trapping them outside. Zoey was now the sole person in control of Project Horizon, and she had no idea what would come next. Zoey stood in the vault, her breath shallow as the doors slammed shut behind her. The heavy rumble of the closing doors echoed through the room, sealing her off from the stranger and any chance of escape. Her pulse raced, the weight of her decision settling heavily on her shoulders. The vault had come to life. The machines hummed louder now, a powerful undercurrent of energy thrumming through the walls. Zoey knew she was no longer just a bystander in this strange place. She had triggered something, far bigger than she could comprehend. The screen in front of her flickered again, displaying a new message. Self-defense protocols active. Unauthorized access detected. Prepare for containment. Containment? Zoey's stomach churned. She hadn't just unlocked the vault. She had activated a defense system designed to protect whatever lay inside. She had no idea how long the vault would remain locked down, but she was running out of time. Every second felt like an eternity, as the room seemed to close in around her. Zoey looked at the control panel, her mind racing. The machines were still running, their purpose unclear, but they seemed connected to the system's defense protocols. The more she examined the screen, the more she realized she could access more than just the vault's security. There were data files hidden within the system, records that might give her the answers she desperately needed. She hesitated, knowing that any wrong move could set off a chain reaction she couldn't stop. But there was no other choice. The machines, the vault, and the project itself were now in her hands. She began typing furiously on the panel, navigating through encrypted files, hoping to find something that would tell her exactly what she had unleashed and what the vault was truly protecting. The countdown on the screen began. Containment protocol, in 10 minutes. Zoey had 10 minutes to understand it all. Zoey's fingers flew across the control panel, her mind racing as the countdown continued to tick down. Every keystroke brought her closer to unlocking the mystery of Project Horizon, but the pressure of time weighed heavily on her. The systems were humming louder now, like a living thing coming to life, and the room felt colder with every passing second. The display on the screen flickered again. Containment protocol, 8 minutes remaining. Zoey cursed under her breath. She needed to act fast. The data files were encrypted, each one revealing more layers of Project Horizon, but she couldn't access anything concrete. Each failed attempt to unlock the files only increased the urgency. Her hand hovered over the next set of commands, but something felt wrong. As she scrolled through the files, a strange pattern caught her eye: repeated codes that led back to a single piece of data. She tapped it, holding her breath as the system began decrypting the file. A new message appeared on the screen. Administrator. Authorization required. Her heart skipped. This was it. She had the device, the key that had unlocked the vault's security system. Without thinking, she slotted it into the panel. The hum of the vault seemed to intensify as the screen blinked one final time. Final stage initiated. Access granted. The room's lights dimmed, and the machines powered down. Zoey felt a shiver run down her spine as the walls of the vault shifted, revealing a hidden compartment that had remained sealed for decades. Inside, a single, sleek device lay untouched, its purpose unknown, but its power undeniable. It was the core of Project Horizon, the heart of everything that had been kept hidden for so long. And now, it was in her hands. Zoey's fingers curled around the device. The countdown had stopped, but her journey was far from over. Zoey stood frozen in the dim light of the vault, her eyes locked on the object now resting in front of her. The device, sleek and almost metallic, glimmered in the faint glow from the screens and machines. It was unlike anything she had seen before, a smooth, almost otherworldly piece of technology. Her fingers itched to reach out and touch it, but a sense of hesitation washed over her. What had she just unlocked? What was the true purpose of Project Horizon? The walls of the vault seemed to pulse around her, the hum of the machinery still echoing in the background. Zoey could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. The more she thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a forgotten project buried away to be discovered by accident. Someone, perhaps even many someones, had worked hard to keep it hidden. But why? Her mind raced as she glanced back at the control panel, where the countdown had stopped. Whatever was inside this vault had been set in motion by her actions. She had unlocked something powerful, something that could change everything. But what exactly had she unearthed? With a deep breath, Zoey walked toward the device, her footsteps echoing in the silent vault. She reached out, feeling the cold metal of the object beneath her fingertips. The device was surprisingly light, and as she picked it up, she noticed a series of intricate markings etched into its surface markings that matched the symbols she had seen on the machines earlier. Suddenly, the vault seemed to come alive again. The walls shifted, and the lights flickered as the machinery hummed back into action. The system that had once been dormant was now fully engaged. Zoey's heart raced as the reality of the situation sank in. She wasn't just holding a piece of technology. She was holding a key to a hidden legacy, a legacy that had the potential to change the course of history. The realization hit her like a wave. Project Horizon wasn't just a failed experiment, as she had initially thought. It was a weapon, a tool, a creation meant for something much bigger. The questions flooded her mind. Who had created this? Why had they kept it hidden? And more importantly, who else was after it now? Her hands tightened around the device, the weight of its power now fully apparent. She had become part of something much larger than herself, and though fear tugged at her chest, there was also a strange sense of purpose. She couldn't back down now. She had uncovered this secret, and it was up to her to decide what to do with it. The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the hallway, leading to the vault. Zoey's breath caught in her throat. Someone else had found their way into the underground complex. She wasn't alone anymore. She quickly turned toward the exit, the device still in her hand. The footsteps grew louder, and she knew she didn't have much time before whoever it was reached the vault. Her heart raced. Was it the stranger from before, or had someone else discovered her presence? She didn't know, but she couldn't afford to wait. Zoey hurriedly searched the vault, looking for a way out. The machines were still running, but there had to be another way to get out without being trapped. As she scanned the walls, her eyes landed on a small panel she hadn't noticed before. It was hidden behind a stack of crates, almost like it had been deliberately concealed. She rushed toward it, praying that it would lead to some kind of escape route. As her fingers pressed against the panel, a faint hiss sounded, and a hidden door slowly slid open. The footsteps were closer now, and Zoey had no choice. She had to make a decision: stay and face whoever was coming, or escape and figure out what Project Horizon truly was. With one last glance at the vault, Zoey made her choice. She stepped through the hidden door, leaving the vault behind, the device still tightly clenched in her hand. Zoey moved quickly through the narrow corridor, her pulse still racing. The vault's door closed behind her with a resounding thud, and the heavy, mechanical hum that had filled the air now seemed distant, almost eerie. The device in her hand was cold, its weight settling in her palm, grounding her thoughts. She had taken the first step into the unknown, and now there was no turning back. The hallway was dimly lit, the walls lined with metal that seemed to shimmer in the low light. Zoey's mind raced as she moved swiftly, trying to process everything she had just uncovered. Project Horizon was far bigger than she had imagined. The vault wasn't just a relic, it was the final stage of a legacy, one that had been hidden for decades. And now, she was holding the key to it. She paused for a moment, breathing deeply to steady herself. The footsteps she had heard earlier were growing louder, and the urgency of her escape increased with each passing second. She didn't know who was following her, but she could feel the pressure of time pushing her forward. She had to figure out what this device meant, and how it could be used before it fell into the wrong hands. Her eyes flickered to the walls as she continued down the corridor, looking for any sign of an exit. The low hum of the machinery had faded, replaced by a strange, almost oppressive silence. It was as if the entire facility was waiting for something, waiting for her. Her hand clenched around the device as she reached a dead end. But there, nestled between two walls, was a small control panel. Without thinking, Zoey approached it, her fingers instinctively reaching for the controls. The panel flickered to life as she touched it, and the faint glow from the screen illuminated her face. A message flashed. Access granted. Welcome, Administrator. She had no idea what this meant. She wasn't sure what she had just activated, but the words, Administrator, echoed in her mind. Whoever created this system had designed it with her in mind, or at least, someone like her. Someone who could unlock the secrets of the Vault and Project Horizon. With a deep breath, Zoey pressed a series of buttons, trying to decipher the unfamiliar symbols that appeared on the screen. The walls around her hummed softly, as if reacting to her presence. The device in her hand seemed to pulse, its energy vibrating in sync with the machinery. As she navigated through the system, Zoey realized that she wasn't just unlocking files, she was activating something far more important. A map appeared on the screen, showing the layout of the underground complex. The vault she had just left was only one small part of a much larger operation. Zoey's eyes traced the path of the map, her heart sinking as she saw the words, Weapon Development Facility, highlighted in red. Her breath caught. This was it. This was why the project had been hidden. Project Horizon wasn't just a research initiative, it was a weapon, a tool of unimaginable power. And now, Zoey was holding the key to it all. As the map zoomed in on the facility, a sense of dread washed over her. She didn't know what she had uncovered, but one thing was clear. The world was about to change, and she had to decide if she was going to control what had been unlocked, or if it would control her. The footsteps were closer now. Zoey's heart raced, but she knew what she had to do. She wasn't running anymore. She was ready to face whatever came next. Zoey's eyes scanned the map again, her mind racing. The map led to a sprawling facility deeper beneath the ground, one that she hadn't yet seen. The more she zoomed in, the clearer it became. The weapon development facility was the heart of Project Horizon. This wasn't just some experiment gone wrong. This was a calculated, controlled initiative, and Zoey had unlocked it. She stepped back from the control panel, her fingers still gripping the device, feeling its weight. The humming noise that filled the corridor now seemed ominous, like the place itself was alive and watching her. The facility was enormous, far beyond what Zoey had imagined. It stretched out in all directions, a labyrinth of secrets buried deep within the earth. It felt like a place designed to be forgotten, hidden away from the world above. But now it was open, and it was up to her what happened next. The footsteps she had heard earlier were growing louder, and Zoey could feel the pressure of time bearing down on her. Someone was coming, someone who likely knew far more about this place than she did. She didn't have the luxury of hesitation. The facility was dangerous, and she had no idea who was in control of it. Was it the stranger from earlier, or someone else entirely? The device she held in her hand felt heavier now, its potential both a gift and a curse. It had activated the vault's security system, and the more Zoey thought about it, the more she realized that whatever this device was, it was integral to unlocking the facility's full capabilities. But Zoey couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. She had already triggered too much, and now she had to decide if she would continue the legacy of Project Horizon or shut it down for good. Her mind raced as she thought about the implications of her discovery. This weapon, whatever it was, could change the course of history. It could give someone unimaginable power, or it could destroy everything. Zoey wasn't naive enough to think she could just walk away. She had a responsibility now, one that she hadn't asked for but could no longer avoid. The map on the control panel updated again, showing a new route that led deeper into the facility. The path was illuminated in red, signaling a place Zoey had to go. It wasn't just a way out. It was the key to understanding what Project Horizon was truly about. The stakes were higher now than ever before. Zoey's breath quickened as the sound of footsteps grew nearer. She knew what she had to do. She could feel the weight of the decisions ahead pressing down on her. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Project Horizon was now her responsibility. What she did with it could change everything. She turned toward the newly revealed path, ready to face whatever waited for her. Zoey took a deep breath as she stepped into the darkness of the facility. The air was thick with dust and the faint hum of machines coming to life. She hadn't fully processed everything she had uncovered, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. The facility stretched endlessly ahead of her, a labyrinth of corridors, abandoned rooms, and mysterious chambers filled with the remnants of Project Horizon. And she was in the heart of it now. The device in her hand felt almost like an anchor, a constant reminder of the responsibility she had assumed. Her mind kept returning to the cryptic words, administrator and weapon development facility. The legacy of Project Horizon had been buried here for decades, and now it was in her hands to decide what would become of it. The control panel she had accessed earlier had shown her the map of the facility, but the deeper she ventured into it, the more she realized how vast and intricate it really was. The path was leading her toward a massive central chamber, one that appeared to be the core of the operation. She wasn't sure what lay ahead, but she had no choice but to keep moving forward. Every step she took felt like it brought her closer to the truth, to the heart of Project Horizon. As she rounded a corner, she paused, listening intently. The footsteps she had heard earlier had stopped, replaced by a tense silence. Zoey's breath quickened. Was it the stranger? Had they found her? She had no idea, but the sense of urgency pushed her onward. She couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. The corridor opened up into a large chamber, its walls lined with advanced machinery and rows of databanks. In the center of the room stood a large control panel, the heart of Project Horizon itself. A faint light blinked on the panel, and Zoey approached it cautiously. She didn't know what she would find, but this was where it all came together. The device in her hand was the key, but it was up to her to decide how to use it. Her fingers hovered over the control panel, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. She could deactivate the system, destroy the project, and keep the world from ever knowing about it. Or she could allow it to continue, activating the weapon that had been hidden here for so long. As Zoey stood there, staring at the glowing screen, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The vault had been sealed for a reason. The people behind Project Horizon had gone to great lengths to keep it buried. She could understand why this was no ordinary weapon. It was something much more dangerous. But Zoey also knew something else. Power, in the wrong hands, could destroy everything. And she had a choice, whether to keep the secrets locked away or use them to shape the future. The device she held wasn't just a key. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one she could write on her own terms. With one final glance at the control panel, Zoey made her decision. She pressed the button. The machines powered down, the lights flickered, and the hum of the facility ceased. For the first time, the facility felt truly still. The weapon was deactivated. Zoey exhaled deeply, feeling both the weight lift from her shoulders and the burden settle in. She had chosen to protect the world from the power of Project Horizon. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. The end of the project marked the beginning of something new for Zoey. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew she had made the right decision. As she turned to leave the chamber, the weight of her actions filled her with a quiet sense of resolve. The world had changed, but Zoey had reclaimed the future.